the Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. Now, always the reminder that if you want to start your own podcast and you don't know how, one of the first things that I would recommend is for you to have a hosting site. So a hosting site enables you for your podcast to be found on your Apple Podcasts, your Google, your Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. And one of the great ones, which I use, obviously, is Buzzsprout, which I love. You can host it there. And the great thing is that there's a link in the show notes below for you to get started and also for you to help support this show. Now, let's get into today's episode. My guest today is Emmie Chiyindiko, who is originally from Zimbabwe, but now living and studying in Bloemfontein in South Africa. In this episode, we learn that Emmie has always been curious and fell in love with the field of chemistry during her practicals in high school. Emmie completed her undergrad in Zimbabwe and came to South Africa to further pursue her studies for her master's and now her PhD. Her research focuses on synergy between experimental and computational chemistry in understanding structure and redox activity of transition metal complexes. Now, I think for some of us, our mind is a little bit blown. But as an award-winning science comm speaker, she eloquently tells us more about this work and the importance. In fact, she tells us more how she was bestowed this prestigious title as an award-winning SciComm speaker, or science communication rather, and her love for science engagement initiatives and also teaching. Lastly, we discuss how Emmie navigates being a Black female international student in South Africa and also specifically in her institution. Stay tuned to find out about all of this and so much more. Hi, Emmie. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show and just so that everybody out there can get to know more about you. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited too. It is my absolute pleasure. I love your podcast and I think it's so great what you're doing, to make sure that women in science are put out there and, some young girls that want to do science have some material and some content and some people to look up to.
So you are one of those people that we're going to get to know more about. So just for introduction purposes, please may you tell us a bit about yourself, your name, where you originally from, where you're based, and what you're currently doing.
I'm Emmie Chiyindiko. I'm originally from Zimbabwe. I was born in Harare, and right now I am living in Bloemfontein in South Africa. I'm turning 27 years old in October 7th to be specific. You might want to write that down. Team Libra, that's what you believe in. Yeah, I mean, if someone wants to send a gift or whatever, it's October 7th, okay? Yeah, so I'm doing my PhD in chemistry right now. I just finished my master's. I actually did my undergrad back in Zimbabwe, and then I only came over to South Africa for my master's, and I'm now doing my PhD. Yeah.
So before we get into everything that you're doing, just away from the sciences, I know that you have got tattoos and you've got a couple. In fact, you're planning on getting your 5th tattoo soon. Do you mind quickly telling us about some of the ones that you have?
You have 4 little miniature ones. And, I just love how miniature they are because I'm a bit of a minimalist. And, well, I'm also very scared of my mom. But, I also just like that they're tiny. This one that I got it's just the word free, Free. I got that a couple of years ago, I think. And one of those where I just felt like, as a Black woman, I'd gotten to a point where I was, chattering my own life, and I was just, trying to build this life that I have and all on my own. And I just felt free to do whatever it is that I want to do. I think, going back a little, I was just always like the golden child. When you've got a golden child status, like you're born and your life is already planned for you. Like literally my dad had a blueprint on everything that I was supposed to be and everything that I was supposed to do, which I did follow the blueprint up until some point. I was doing well in school and I was behaving the way that I'm supposed to behave, the way that you ought to behave as a young Black girl in society, at church, in school, like all of those circles, and then at some point at around 17, I kind of slipped in quotes, but at 17, I actually became a teen mom, and that was like a big blow. Yeah, it was a big blow to everybody because I'm also the last born. So, like I'm like the baby and the baby is having a baby and it was pandemonium. And it was a really hard time for me, for my family. And, at that point, when people have already planned your life, what it's supposed to be, it's like, everything is just tumbling down. And, I got through it, now turning 27 and, built a very beautiful life. I have a beautiful, smart, intelligent mini version of me. But I think just at that point, the thing about being a teen mom, actually, for where I'm from and the religion that I was brought up in, the Christian religion, at that point, you're pretty much written off. For me, in retrospect, it was kind of a blessing because I don't know where I'd be today if I had followed the plan that other people had for me. So basically there, when that dream and that societal vision was destroyed and I was starting again from scratch, I basically could build whatever that I wanted to build, So that tattoo for me symbolizes that, like true freedom for me is living your truth. And we also need to know that your truth changes all the time. The truth that you knew 5 years ago is not the truth that you know today. And for you to really live a true and brave life, you have to be able to change your mind when presented with new information.
I'm glad that you've reached that stage of being free, and you touch on something so important, like you said, being a Black female. Especially when you are the smart one, everybody has got that predisposed idea, and it's really hard to keep up that that perfect status, And maybe, like you said, maybe it was sort of like a blessing in disguise because then you got those chains off, and you actually got to like breathe to be like, oh, I can actually do this without other people. Expecting so much from me, because that pressure can get a lot, and I think many people they don't know it yet. Even I think slowly for myself also a little bit, I also fall under that trap that you always think that you have to be this model citizen. And it's hard. It's really hard keeping that up. So that's beautiful. I love that message. Regards to you getting into the sciences, did you always actually want to be in science? And despite the hurdles, how did you end up coming, for example, to South Africa? Can you just give us an idea on how that happened?
Science just found me. Hey, I'm just one of those people who's always just been inquisitive, like I always just need to figure out how stuff works. You really have a few options, I think, as I will speak as a Zimbabwean child. I don't want to generalize, but you have a few options. You either become a doctor or you become maybe an engineer, an accountant. That's acceptable. You definitely do not become a rapper. There are things that you need to do. So at some point it was, I want to be a doctor, which was kind of insane because I don't really like seeing people hurt because I'm such an empath. Like I see someone hurt, I start feeling the pain. I was not going to flourish as a doctor. But then that was basically the goal, until high school when I was having chemistry classes, and I was really good at titrations. I was like a titration guru. Like I was the queen of type. Like when
Okay,
some
girl.
people overshoot, like when you put a little bit too much and you miss the end point. I was not missing the end point. Like I loved handling that thing. I really did. And I think I just never knew how good I was at it though, because I always undermined myself for some reason. I'm not sure why I always undermined myself. And then like when my marks would come back and then I would have these high marks, I would just assume that everybody else has the same. Like I'd get back like 95 or 98%. And I'm just like, oh, okay. I guess everybody else in class has the same. Like I would never even swap papers with the person beside me because I was just too scared. I was just like, man, like what if their mark is like better than me? You know, that perfectionism thing as well, which just always made me feel like I was falling short in chemistry. And I loved my teachers and the stories that he would tell me. He went abroad, I think, and did his PhD. Like he always had these crazy lab stories about when they almost blew stuff up. I just fell in love with chemistry, I think, around Form 3, Form 4 there. Yeah. And it's just been it's been my love ever since. Love at first sight. The chemistry is just amazing. The chemistry between me and chemistry is like, pretty much amazing.
Pun intended there.
Pun intended. Yeah. So yeah, I went on to do that for my undergrad, and then, well, unfortunately, where I come from in Zimbabwe, a lot of graduates, a lot of economic troubles. If you've seen the news lately, hashtag Zimbabwean Lives Matter, the kind of craziness that's going on down there, and instability and lack of jobs, lack of opportunities. So I definitely wanted to continue my studies back home, but look elsewhere. And then I came here to South Africa, and then I started doing my master's, and I was doing really, really well, despite the days where I would go to the bathroom and cry. I was doing really well. And, you have tough days in research. Like sometimes things are just not working in the lab, really, really well. And I ended up getting a PhD scholarship, which I'm on right now. And it's great. And I actually published for my master's, by the way. I did not do the thesis. I did my master's via publications. So she's published, Hanny.
Well done.
I know.
Congratulations.
Like it is really great because publishing is really, really hard though. But it's literal currency in academia. Like being a published researcher I'm so lucky to have the supervisor that I have who pushes me to do these things. Doing my PhD now, enjoying it.
Yeah, speaking of your PhD, you are a student at the University of Free State, which is in Bloemfontein, and your research focuses on the synergy between experimental and computational chemistry in understanding the structure and the redox reactivity of transition metal complexes. Okay, so I want you to please tell us about this research for some of us who are like, who touched chemistry like in first year and left it there, or who've never even touched chemistry. Please tell us more about this research and why it's so important.
Okay, so number one, I will try to keep it short and simple. Number one, I am working on metal complexes. Metal complexes are you have a metal and then you are fusing that metal with an organic compound and then the redox part. Redox is reduction and oxidation. So I'm looking at the reduction and the oxidation of those complexes. What reduction and oxidation is basically when a compound gives off an electron or it accepts an electron. So this giving and accepting of electrons is the basis of all chemical reactions. Every time any reaction happens, rusting, or you're making an egg, or at the core of it, there's an exchange of electrons where something moves from one state to another state. Things combine, things break off, etc. So that's why we're looking at the redox, because we want to see how these metal complexes react. So, and then the computational chemistry, that is a very exciting little bit. I actually started doing computational chemistry in my postgrad. I had not done it during my undergraduate. Okay, so I was speaking to my friend last week who's a chef, and I was using this analogy. It might be totally off, okay? Let's hope it works out in the end.
Okay.
Trying to explain what computational chemistry is. But let's say you've got a bowl, and then you put in flour, you put in eggs, and then you put in baking powder, you put in vanilla essence. These are basically the ingredients of making like pancakes. So you put it in a bowl, and then you put it in this machine that basically tries to find the best output possible for all these ingredients, tries to find how we can position them so that in the end we have something that is stable and something that is useful. So basically in computational chemistry, you feed in structures into a computer system, and that computer system will literally move each and every element of the structure in different ways. So it's a very fast, and there's a lot of data involved, because if it's a very big compound and it's got many different elements, there's a lot of movement. You're basically moving one element 1 degree left, the other one 1 degree right. So it's making all these simulations so that in the end, the structure is at its best form, at its most stable form, at the lowest energy form. So you can't do it on your own, because you take 100,000 years. So you let the computer, work it, move things about, and then the output is this particular compound is most stable in this structure and in this form. I don't know if that worked, man. Science communication is
No, it does. It does. It actually does.
You're always trying to break things down and make sure that people understand what exactly is happening, because science is in our everyday world. It's not very removed from everyday society, and it is really our duty to make sure people understand what it is that we're doing.
I think you explained it in a very simple but effective manner without taking away all the important stuff. And I'm sure that's because you are an award-winning science communicator.
Yes.
What a prestigious title.
Yes, girl.
How did that happen? I mean, we could tell that, but like, how did that happen?
Well, it was a cold, windy Tuesday afternoon. I'm joking. But okay. But genuinely, what happened in my psychom journey, this is something that happens in my life a lot, where I start doing something and I think that it's new. And then I look back into my life, and then I see that, wait, I have been doing this in some way. So during my master's, I was doing my research. I was in the lab a lot. And I will say sometimes it gets tiring when you're in the lab all day and you're doing experiments and, those LED lights and machinery, and it gets a bit tiring. So I just saw this email that popped up, on my screen about a science competition. It was the 3-minute thesis, and it was being held at our school. So you just have to, walk in, tell them about your research in 3 minutes in a way that's understandable, entertaining, and and you walk out. I will not lie and say that it was just the love for SciComm. There was some money involved. I mean, I was like, okay, so are you telling me that I come in, I tell you about my research for 3 minutes, and then you give me 5,000 Rand? I'm not like 3 minutes. Okay, I think I can do that. So I watched some videos online because there's a lot of material about 3-minute thesis competition. A lot of universities do it. So, and I was like, man, this is kind of dope. This is exciting. So I do my talk, I practice, I work well under pressure, really. So I literally waited until the last day, and the thing was the next morning. So that evening I was like, okay, we're under pressure. We have to come up with something. And I did, and I went on stage and I delivered my 3-minute thesis talk, and it was exhilarating. When you're doing something and then a part of you is standing on the side looking at you slaying. That's how I felt. I was just like, man, wow. I was just like, damn, I am killing this. Like I was like, I am killing this. And I love those feelings, Every time I do a project, when I genuinely feel excitement and I can feel that, man, I put in a lot of work and this is beautiful, I know that it's going to be a success. So, I went on stage, I did my talk, and it was amazing, and I was like, damn, I like this. And then the next thing I did was a competition called Fame Lab. It was also a science communication competition, but this was a much bigger platform because I had won the institutional at institutional level. And this was a bigger platform because there's a lot of universities. So I won the provincial, and then I went to the nationals. So this is all the universities in South Africa. And then I won the nationals. And man, it was just a roller coaster ride. And I gave a presentation to a room. I couldn't even see the end of the room. Like, it was a huge room. And it's just exciting. Being on stage I cannot explain it. I cannot explain the excitement and how alive I feel. Anyway, so after I won the nationals, I then went to the UK, all expense paid trip. And I was like, is this me? Is this my life?
It's you, girl.
Yeah. I'm like, man, I need to call that auntie from church who was like, oh, this girl is done. I need to be like, hey, sis, you need something from Primark. Or like, I'm joking. I'm not that petty. But it was exciting. I went to the UK. I met so many people from so many different countries. I had the time of my life. And from then, the SciComm stamp was on my forehead, and I've done a lot of community engagement programs. I've worked with high school students on science debates. They are amazing to work with as well. Like high school students, amazing. Kids, amazing to work with. I've done keynote speeches. Man, I've just been unstoppable really in this SciComm journey, and I enjoy it so much. And I feel like if you're a researcher, you don't literally have to do SciComm, because I understand not everyone is comfortable on stage, and you don't have to force yourself to give speeches. You can do other things. Like right now I'm working on a comic book actually. And yeah,
so cool.
So
do you draw?
I was just like, oh no, I don't. Oh, I'm terrible. Oh Jesus, I can only draw the stick man. Yeah. No, I'm working with an artist, because as well, science. You can do some collaborative work with other yeah, like we should not just be in our ivory tower and be like science is science and we don't care about everybody else. You can merge science with poetry, you can merge science with dancing. I know some people did like a sci-bri. I'm not sure what exactly was going down there. The science bri, I do not know, but it sounded interesting. And anything that involves food, I want to be there. But I am doing this comic book now, which I hope is going to be out this year, where we've got a Black superhero who is also a woman, loosely based on me. But yeah, I just one day I was just
so cool.
sitting, and then I was like, I wonder what it would be like if I was an actual superhero and saving the world with science. I mean, which we kind of are as scientists, but I just thought it would be cool.
That's so dope. That's fantastic.
So I was just saying that you don't have to just speak. You can do a lot of other things, But then my thing is just find things that you enjoy doing outside of research. Research should not be your whole life. It's part of your life. It's not your whole life. No matter what the supervisors and the HODs tell you, you do not live and breathe your thesis. Okay.
Yeah.
You are a person who is doing a PhD or who is doing a master's who likes to do other things, and you need to do other things as well that bring you joy and happiness.
Preach it, preach it, preach it. So you've had all of these successes, Emmie. You've traveled the world. You've been teaching young students. It sounds like everything is going great. But I know that there's a little bit of a but coming here. I just, just despite all of these successes, we touched on it a little bit about how it's difficult being a young Black woman. But for you, you are a young Black foreign woman in South Africa. And that on its own, I know this as well, speaking from my own experience, also being from Malawi, there's a lot of hurdles that are put in front of you and that you have to jump on. I think from afar, people are like, oh my word, Emmie is doing great. She's getting scholarships. She's traveling the world. But, there's hurdles. You can't get some funding. You can't get jobs. There's things that are put in place that only, I think, international students, I think all over the world, whether you're an international student anywhere, you will relate to the visa issues. Like, let's never get started on that. So I just wanted to ask you, how are you navigating all of these obstacles and potential challenges that are placed in front of you and still like killing it and slaying it?
Girl, the PTSD, not even post-trauma, present trauma.
Yeah.
It's really hard. I won't lie and say that it's a walk in the park. I mean, it's really hard because I mean there is the good side of it here where I'm in a land where I feel like okay, I will not say the sky is the limit in this land. I mean, maybe the ceiling is the limit, but I have more wiggle space to do a lot of other things that I wouldn't necessarily have the space to do if I were in Zimbabwe. Unfortunately, because of the current situation that is going on in Zimbabwe, I have more wiggle space here. But definitely, the sky is not the limit because they are the gatekeepers of certain opportunities. And I genuinely don't know how I feel about it when it comes to, where you are qualified sometimes to do something and you're not awarded the opportunity because of where you were born. I just find it hard to wrap my head around. I mean, at the same time, I understand the fear that some people have in this country, I understand some of the fear that they have in losing the opportunities that have been created by their own government for them to other people.
Yeah, of course.
But at the core, I mean, we're all human beings, trying to make the best of our lives. It's such a heated and nuanced conversation to have, but it has been hard, especially for my master's. I came in and I couldn't come and just ask for a scholarship because I had no track record really here. I was a kid coming from Zimbabwe. My supervisor took a chance on me. Other people actually turned me down. They said, we don't have space for you in our lab. And my supervisor was just like, look, I can take you, but you have to pay for yourself. And at that point, I was like, the fact that you're giving me a chance is all that I need. All I wanted was a chance.
Yeah.
And I did my master's. It was very hard. When you're an international student, you have to pay all your fees, up front at the beginning of the year. You're staying in residence. Yeah. You have to pay, thousands and thousands of dollars. I think at some point it was 60,000, 70,000, and you have to pay it at once. And you're there like, where am I supposed to get that? So you're in trouble. You're being threatened to be deregistered. And it was really, really hard. Because I remember even at the time that I was traveling, the time that I went to the UK and the time that I did the nationals and all of that, I still had like debt. I was in debt with the school. I owed them money. And at that point, I felt very disappointed with the international student support because at that point, the school came to me and they said, we want to do a story about you. And, we want to put it in the paper and do an ad, and they pay to put stories in the paper. And I was there like, you guys are okay with paying money to say that you're associated with me and pushing, your brand. But I have real-time problems, like I'm going to get deregistered very soon. You understand that I'm getting these emails that we're going to deregister you if you don't give us the money. But you guys are willing to spend on PR and not willing to spend on my actual, issues here, because you can't just clap hands for me. I know that I'm not, you don't owe me that. But if this is supposed to be a relationship, a give and take relationship, you can't just clap hands for me. You can't spend money on PR when I have all this debt. And it was a heated conversation, and I was really heartbroken, by the systems that are put in place to support international students. I don't think they really get to the core of the problems that we have. We should not be paying our fees, all of it at the beginning of the year. It's unfair, it's not fair. And I applied for the funding opportunities, but they only give a very small 3%, to international students. So the chances of you getting it are very slim. But in the end, I will say kudos to my department, to the chemistry department. They supported me in the end. They cleared my bills in the end. But this was after throwing a tantrum, this was after I had to insist. This was after, which is why as well, it's important to speak up for yourself. And it's important to know your worth and what you're bringing to the table. Because I put it down, I said, look at my work. My work speaks for itself. You came to me you wanted to do PR because you knew that my story would bring traffic to your website. My story would, has put the school on the map, even if it's brief, because stories come and go, but the value of my work. And that's why you're giving me all this attention. But you also need to help me with the core issues that I'm dealing with. So in the end, I fought for myself. They helped me. I hated the fact that I had to explain that, but then sometimes you have to stand up for yourself, and sometimes you have to demand what you deserve. So when I came in for my PhD, from the jump, I said that when I came for my master's, you didn't know me. You didn't know what I could do. This is me after my master's, a master's with highest honor, with distinction, a master's that I published 3 papers. 3 papers.
Wow.
Generally, when you publish 3 papers, you can actually get a PhD. You know, for a master's, you need to publish 2. I published 3 papers. I did 3MT. I did all these SciComm things. I've spoken in big stages. The deputy minister's office asked me to speak to kids in this province. You know what I can do. So make me an offer. That's what I said for my PhD. I was like, yeah, I won't do the PhD, but what are you offering me? Make me an offer, and then I'll accept it or reject it. And then, you know, people are like, okay, you know, let's think about it. If you tried NRA, I'm like, I have tried everything. You know that I have tried. So you need to make me an offer. And I got a couple of offers, you know, but in the end, I went with the best offer that I had gotten. So I'm also going to be doing my PhD via publications, one which is already under review. And it's, and that's my journey.
Wow, Emmie, like that last part, you're a badass. Like, love it. I love how you've fought for yourself. I think very rarely do we really, like you said, stand up and speak for ourselves rather. Because you do, like you said, you do bring all of this to the table. Now, like, you know, you guys make me an offer. You know, like this is the type of stuff that happens in the business world. Like, make me an offer. So I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it that you brought it here.
Movie. Yeah. it was great.
It sounded like a movie. Great. I was out here cheering for you.
Oh, thanks, bro. Yeah, but it comes from that. It comes from that also, that 17-year-old girl where people were telling her, hey, your life is over. Hey, because this is what has happened in your life, we have now labeled you with these labels. And me having to fight off that and be like, no, you cannot define me. You cannot tell me who I am. You cannot tell me what I can do. And it's the same spirit that I'm using even now to stand up for myself and say, you know what? You cannot define me. This does not define me. This is what I need. This is what I'm going to do. Yeah.
Fantastic. I love it. While we are on this sister power, girl power movement, just to close off the show, what advice would you give to somebody? I know you've touched on it a little bit, but just that, you know, that last golden nugget to a young African, in particular, a woman who wants to get into STEM, but also just in your field and has gone through, has maybe got a lot of stumbling blocks where they thought, okay, you know what, my life here is done. So what advice would you give them?
The number one thing is to trust yourself. In a world where sometimes as women, people are doubting you and people don't believe in women and don't believe you, trust yourself. You have all the answers that you need within you. It sounds like mumbo jumbo things, but trust me on this. It works in everything. It works in science. It works in the lab, where you don't have to ask your coworker, hey, what color do you think this is? You know, trust yourself. You know what's best for you.
No, that's true. That's true. We sometimes do have to look within ourselves and trust ourselves as much as other people can tell you what to do. Sometimes, you yourself know. And Emmie, thank you so much for chatting with me today. It was amazing talking with you and just hearing more about your story and your whole entire journey. I had a really good time.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you so much for having me. This was a really good chat.
It's my pleasure. And to everybody else listening, thank you once again. Episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl and with an E. Until next time, goodbye.